So, Andy78 asked why sound, which is weird because I didn't tell anybody that I was making a series called Why Music. But sure, okay, yeah, if we're going to start from the beginning of music theory, we ought to start with sound waves. So, a wave isn't a physical object, it's something that happens when you disturb a medium. So, for example, we got water, this is the medium, and I can disturb it. There we go. Medium plus disturbance makes waves. This medium could be any number of things. It could be as simple as a rope. If I disturb it, this time by shaking it, I can make waves that move down the length of the rope.
The medium could even be a crowd of people. If someone disturbs this medium by shoving against someone else, that person is going to bump against a few more people, and so on and so forth until you have a surge on your hands. Notice that none of the people are moving that much. It's the energy is what's moving. What we're looking at is the trajectory of shoving. If you get enough people crammed together like that, they end up acting like a fluid. And just like fluids, they can be a medium for waves.
All these media have a certain way that they want to be if they're left undisturbed for a long time. The water wants to be perfectly flat. The rope wants to hang slack.
And the crowd of people wants to be evenly spaced out.
And if enough time goes by, they'll all go back to this state eventually. This is equilibrium, the undisturbed state of a medium. Just like this fabric. As long as I don't touch it, it's going to stay exactly like it is. But on the other hand, I could mess with its equilibrium. This would be like the crest of a wave, like the bumps on water. But as you can see, I can't bunch up this part without a lot of the rest of the fabric getting stretched out to compensate for it. If this is positive, then waves also have a negative side. For every peak, there's a valley. The rope could go up or down. I can make a peak or a valley. There we go.
What's the opposite of a wave of shoving? Here it is. Even though all the people are moving forward, the green bits, which only show up when there's space between people, are moving backwards. The wave in question here is a wave of empty space.
What happens when a peak and a valley meet? So, here's the peak, here's the valley, and focus on the middle where they're eventually going to meet. Now, in that exact moment when they hit each other, they actually cancel out for just a second. 1 plus minus 1 is 0. And likewise, if two peaks meet, they're going to double up. 1 plus 1 is 2.
That's all fun and good. I like to use a lot of analogies rather than math because I'm not very good at math, but also because I want us to be able to visualize and feel things rather than thinking of them as only equations. That said, though, a lot of you might have more experience with waves in mathematics. Maybe you had to draw a sine wave onto a graph. And that does have something to do with sound waves. But what does it have in common with real waves? What does the graph you made in math represent physically? If we're talking about a rope, that's easy to answer. It's a 2D representation of space. The x-axis is, well, the x-axis, right and left, the length of the rope, and the y-axis is up and down. With water, it's a bit trickier because the surface is a flat plane. But we could just say that the x-axis is a line going straight down the middle of the tub. But what about the crowd analogy? It's a plane just like water, so we can draw a line right down the middle, call that the x-axis. But what about the y-axis? Nothing is moving up or down in this footage, so how does a graph represent this crowd? In this case, the y-axis represents pressure. 0 is equilibrium. When it's higher than that, people are bunched together, and when it's lower than that, people are spread out. So even when a wave doesn't look like we'd expect, it can still be represented by this graph. The y-axis just represents something else, for example, pressure. So, why sound? The air is made up of particles who, just like the people in this crowd, want to be a certain distance away from each other. If something shoves a few of them, they're going to keep shoving and make a wave of high pressure. Similarly, if there's suddenly room where there wasn't before, the air is going to rush in and everyone around is going to move in to fill in the gaps, making a wave of low pressure. These pressure fluctuations reach our eardrums, and we interpret them as sound.